A crowd gathers as a dog bravely stands guard over an injured stranger. The incredible loyalty on display leaves onlookers stunned. And if you cherish your family and love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and avoid 10 years of bad luck. Springfield mornings were typically quiet, and this particular day started no differently at Central Park. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when Linda Matthews, a woman in her early 30s with auburn hair tied in a messy bun, released Max's leash. The golden retriever's coat gleamed in the morning light as he bounded across the grass, his tail wagging with unbridled enthusiasm. Linda had adopted Max 3 years ago from the local shelter. At first, she'd been hesitant about taking in an adult dog, but Max's gentle demeanor had won her over immediately. Now, watching him play with other dogs in the park, she couldn't imagine life without him. He was particularly engaged in a game of chase with a black Labrador, their paws kicking up morning dew as they ran. Several other dog owners gathered in their usual spots, creating a familiar morning routine. Mrs. Henderson with her 3 pugs waddled by, while Tom, a college student, threw a frisbee for his border collie. Max participated in all the activities, moving from one group to another with natural social grace that made him popular among both dogs and humans. Across town, Jake Morrison adjusted his bicycle helmet, slipping his wireless earbuds into place. At 26, he had recently moved to Springfield for a fresh start, taking a job as a graphic designer at a local advertising firm. His morning routine included a 10-mile bike ride before heading to work, a habit he'd maintained since college. Jake scrolled through his playlist, selecting his usual morning mix of alternative rock. The volume was perhaps a bit too loud, but he enjoyed the way the music isolated him from the world, creating a bubble of solitude as he rode. His red and black racing bike had been a graduation gift from his mother, and its familiar frame felt like an extension of his body. The morning traffic was beginning to pick up as Jake pedaled through the residential areas. He barely noticed the increasing number of cars, focused instead on the rhythm of his pedaling and the beat of the music. His bright yellow cycling jacket made him visible to most drivers, but he remained oblivious to the growing danger approaching from behind. 2 blocks away, Michael Thompson fought with his phone while driving his silver sedan. He'd received a text message that made his hands shake, causing him to swerve slightly as he tried to respond. The message contained information he'd been dreading for years, and his attention wavered between the road and the glowing screen in his hand. The intersection of Maple and Oak Streets was usually busy at this hour, with commuters heading downtown. Traffic lights changed their usual pattern. Cars moved in their designated lanes, and pedestrians waited at crosswalks. Everything seemed normal, but the elements of tragedy were already in motion. Max's ears perked up at the sound of screeching tires, even before the accident occurred. His instincts, honed by years of evolution and reinforced by his training, alerted him to the impending danger. He stopped playing and turned his head toward the street, his body tensing as if preparing for action. The scene unfolded in slow motion. Thompson's car veered into the bike lane. Jake remained unaware with his music playing, and the distance between them decreased rapidly. The morning sun glinted off Jake's helmet, creating a brief flash of light that caught Max's attention. The dog's muscles coiled, ready to spring into action, though Linda hadn't yet noticed anything was wrong. The impact, when it came, shattered the morning peace. The sound of metal striking metal, followed by a human cry of pain, echoed through the previously tranquil street. Jake's body flew from his bicycle, landing with a sickening thud on the asphalt, while his bike skidded across the road in a shower of sparks. This moment would later be replayed countless times on social media and news reports, but for now, it hung in the air like a photograph, frozen in time. The stage was set for what would become not just a story of heroism, but a complex web of relationships and secrets that would change Springfield forever. The chaos that followed the accident transformed the peaceful morning into a scene of urgency and tension. Max's reaction was immediate and instinctive. Breaking free from his play area, he bolted across the grass, his powerful legs carrying him toward the fallen cyclist. Linda's shouts for him to stop went unheeded as the dog moved with singular purpose. Jake lay motionless on the asphalt, his yellow cycling jacket now scraped and dirty. His helmet had a visible crack along the side, though it had done its job in protecting his head from the worst of the impact. Small drops of blood began forming beneath his scraped arm, creating tiny dark circles on the pavement. Traffic screeched to a halt around the accident scene, creating a cacophony of honking horns and squealing brakes. Some drivers emerged from their vehicles, phones already raised to record the unfolding scene. The silver sedan that had struck Jake sat at an awkward angle, its driver door still closed, engine running. Max positioned himself strategically between Jake's prone form and the surrounding vehicles. His normally friendly demeanor had transformed into something more primal, a guardian stance that spoke of centuries of breeding and instinct. His teeth weren't bared, but his posture communicated clear warning to anyone who might approach carelessly. At the nearby Crown Coffee Shop, Alex Martinez and Emma Thompson sat at their usual window table, initially laughing about something on Emma's phone. The sound of the crash drew their attention, and they watched as the scene unfolded before them. Alex, a lanky 16-year-old with perpetual bedhead, nearly spilled his latte as he jumped up from his seat. Emma, slightly younger but often mistaken for the more mature of the pair, grabbed her phone instinctively. Her hand trembled slightly as she began recording, not yet realizing that the driver of the silver sedan was connected to her in ways she couldn't imagine. Her dark hair fell forward, partially obscuring her face as she leaned closer to the window. The gathering crowd created a loose circle around the accident scene, maintaining a respectful distance from Max's protective perimeter. Some people whispered among themselves, while others called out suggestions that only added to the confusion. The morning sun cast long shadows across the scene, creating an almost theatrical quality to the unfolding drama. Several cars attempted to maneuver around the accident, their drivers impatient with the delay. Each time a vehicle moved too close, Max's barking intensified, his deep voice carrying authority that made even the largest SUVs pause. His golden coat bristled, and his tail held straight. No longer the friendly companion from moments ago, but a serious protector. A woman in scrubs pushed through the crowd, identifying herself as a nurse. She stopped short when Max turned his attention to her, his eyes intense but somehow discerning. The dog's intelligence showed in the way he assessed her approach, his posture remaining protective but not aggressive. The morning breeze ruffled his fur as he stood his ground, creating an impossible barrier between the injured cyclist and potential help. Alex and Emma finally emerged from the coffee shop, their drinks forgotten on the table inside. The scene before them felt surreal, more like something from a movie than their usual Tuesday morning routine. Alex's typical fear of dogs seemed momentarily forgotten as he watched Max's display of protective instinct. Emma's phone continued recording, capturing what wow. LD soon become viral footage of an extraordinary moment in Springfield's history. The air grew thick with tension as more people gathered, their collective breath held as they waited to see what would happen next. The driver of the silver sedan remained inside, his silhouette visible but motionless, adding another layer of mystery to the unfolding situation. No one yet knew the complex web of relationships that would be revealed, or how this morning would connect seemingly unrelated lives in unexpected ways. This moment, captured on dozens of phones and soon to be shared across social media platforms, was more than just a traffic accident. It was the beginning of a story that would unravel long-buried secrets and force confrontations with past decisions. But for now, all eyes were on the golden retriever, standing guard over a stranger, demonstrating a level of courage and dedication that would inspire the entire community. Alex Martinez had spent his entire life avoiding dogs. Ever since a neighbor's German Shepherd had chased him when he was 6, he'd crossed the street at the mere sight of a leash. But watching Max's unwavering protection of Jake stirred something deep within him, challenging his long-held fears. The scene before him continued to unfold with intense focus. Max maintained his protective stance, his barking a clear warning to anyone who approached too quickly. Jake remained unconscious on the asphalt, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The morning traffic had completely stopped now, creating an eerie silence broken only by Max's occasional barks and the murmur of the growing crowd. Emma still held her phone, recording everything, but her hands had begun to shake. She noticed details that others missed. The way Max's ears twitched at every sound, how his body shifted to maintain the best protective position, the intelligent assessment in his eyes as he watched the crowd. Her own fear began to mix with admiration for the dog's bravery. A car horn blared suddenly, causing several people to jump. An impatient driver had attempted to squeeze through the gathered crowd, coming dangerously close to where Jake lay. Max's response was immediate and fierce. His barking intensified, and he positioned himself directly in the car's path. The vehicle stopped abruptly, its driver visibly startled by the dog's bold defense. Alex felt his heart racing as he watched this display of courage. His usual fear of dogs seemed increasingly insignificant compared to the emergency before him. Someone needed to take action, and the realization hit him that he could be that person. The nurse who had tried to approach earlier stood helplessly at the edge of the crowd, her medical expertise useless without being able to reach the patient. Making a decision that would later surprise even himself, Alex stepped forward. "We need an ambulance," he announced, his voice cracking slightly but growing stronger with each word. "I'll run to the fire station. It's only 2 blocks away." Without waiting for a response, he turned and began sprinting down the sidewalk, his fear of dogs momentarily forgotten in the urgency of the moment. Emma, watching her friend's unexpected burst of courage, moved closer to Jake. She knew basic first aid from her summer camp counselor training. And while Max's protective behavior made direct help impossible, she could at least try to communicate with Jake. Kneeling at a safe distance, she began speaking in a calm, clear voice. "Jake, if you can hear me, you're not alone," she called out, surprising herself by using his name after spotting it on his partially visible employee ID. "Help is coming. You're safe. Max is protecting you." She noticed Max's ears twitch at the sound of his name, but his guard didn't waver. The tension peaked when another vehicle attempted to maneuver around the scene. Max, already exhausted from his constant vigilance, had to dart quickly to prevent the car from coming too close to Jake. The sudden movement caused several gasps from the crowd, but Max immediately returned to his protective position, though his breathing had become more labored. The morning sun had risen higher, making the asphalt hot beneath Max's paws. His golden fur was damp with sweat, but his determination never wavered. His eyes remained alert, scanning the crowd continuously for potential threats while maintaining his position between Jake and any approaching vehicles. This display of unwavering loyalty was transforming the gathered observers. People who had initially been frustrated by the traffic delay now stood in respectful silence, witnessing something extraordinary. Phones captured every moment, but more importantly, hearts were being changed by this demonstration of pure, selfless protection. Alex's footsteps could be heard pounding against the pavement as he ran toward the fire station. His previous fear of dogs seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by a desperate need to help. The sound of his running faded into the distance, leaving behind a scene frozen in an extraordinary moment of courage, both human and canine. The morning that had started so ordinarily had become something remarkable, a testament to the unexpected ways that courage can manifest and fear can be overcome. But beneath the surface of this dramatic scene, deeper mysteries were waiting to be uncovered, connections that would reveal themselves in ways no one could have anticipated. Linda arrived at the scene breathless, her morning jog forgotten as she pushed through the crowd. Her first glimpse of Max standing guard over Jake made her heart swell with a mixture of pride and concern. She had always known her dog was special, but this display of protective instinct surpassed anything she could have imagined. As a former emergency response coordinator, Linda immediately assessed the situation with practiced efficiency. The crowd, while well-meaning, had created a chaotic environment that needed organization. Jake remained on the ground, protected but unable to receive medical attention because of Max's intense guardianship. Time was critical, and Linda knew she needed to take control. "Everyone, please step back and create a wider circle," she called out, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to managing crisis situations. The crowd responded instinctively to her confidence, moving back several feet. If you're not actively helping, please move to the sidewalk. We need to create space for emergency services. Linda's attention turned to Max, whose eyes had flickered toward her voice but remained focused on his protective duty. She knew better than to approach directly. Even as his owner, she recognized that Max was operating on pure instinct now. His loyalty had transferred temporarily to the injured cyclist, and she would need to respect that while finding a way to help. She spotted a young woman kneeling nearby, Emma, who seemed to have established some form of communication with the scene. "Keep talking to him," Linda encouraged her, noting how Max's ears twitched at Emma's voice. "You're doing great. What's your name?" The brief conversation helped establish a sense of order amidst the chaos. Linda then began coordinating with bystanders, assigning tasks to create a semblance of structure. "You in the blue shirt," she pointed to a man recording with his phone. "Please direct traffic around the corner. And you," she gestured to another onlooker, "call emergency services if no one is already." Her natural leadership abilities emerged, transforming the chaotic scene into a more managed situation. The silver sedan's driver remained inside his vehicle, a detail that Linda noted with concern. She approached the car carefully, staying in Max's line of sight to avoid alarming him. The driver's door was still locked, and through the window, she could see a man gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white with tension. Something about his behavior seemed off, but Linda filed that observation away for later. A subtle shift in the air announced the approach of sirens in the distance. Alex had succeeded in his mission to the fire station. Linda knew the next few moments would be crucial. Emergency responders would need to access Jake, but Max's protective instinct could complicate their efforts. She began moving slowly toward her dog, speaking in soft, reassuring tones. "Max, good boy," she called gently. "You vais donner sauvet." Such a good protector. Her words seemed to reach something in Max's consciousness. His posture remained alert, but his ears turned more fully toward her voice. Linda continued her careful approach, reading every subtle change in her dog's body language. The gathered crowd watched in tense silence as Linda worked to create a connection with Max. Her movements were deliberate and calm, each step calculated to reassure rather than challenge. She had trained Max in basic obedience, but this situation demanded something more nuanced, a balance between respecting his protective instinct and establishing necessary control. Emma continued her quiet commentary to Jake, creating a steady stream of reassuring words that helped maintain the delicate atmosphere Linda was trying to establish. The morning sun had risen fully now, casting sharp shadows across the scene as emergency vehicles approached from both directions. Linda positioned herself where Max could see her clearly while maintaining his protective stance over Jake. She began using hand signals familiar from their training sessions, movements that represented safety and trust in their shared language. The next few moments would be critical. The success of the emergency response would depend largely on their ability to work with, rather than against, Max's protective instinct. The underlying complexity of the situation, the mysterious driver, the approaching first responders, the gathered crowd, created layers of tension that would soon unravel in unexpected ways. But for now, Linda focused solely on building a bridge between Max's protective instinct and the help Jake desperately needed. The local news van from Channel 8 squealed to a halt at the edge of the scene, drawn by police scanner chatter about an unusual traffic accident. Tom Chun, a veteran reporter known for his human interest stories, emerged with his camera operator, Sarah, already filming. They caught sight of Max standing guard over Jake, and Tom immediately recognized the potential magnitude of this story. "Keep rolling," he whispered to Sarah as they worked their way through the crowd. The morning light created perfect conditions for filming, highlighting Max's golden fur as he maintained his vigilant watch. Tom noticed Linda's careful orchestration of the scene, appreciating how she'd transformed chaos into controlled crisis management. Within minutes, the footage began streaming live on Channel 8's morning news, catching the attention of viewers across Springfield. Social media platforms exploded with shares and comments as #HeroDog started trending locally, then regionally. The raw footage of Max's protective stance resonated with people in a way that transcended typical news stories. Amateur videos from bystanders' phones had already begun circulating online, each showing different angles of Max's unwavering protection. One particularly powerful clip captured the moment when the impatient driver had tried to push through, showing Max's fierce response and unflinching courage. Comments poured in from around the world, praising the dog's loyalty and bravery. The growing media presence added another layer of complexity to the scene. Linda found herself managing not only the immediate crisis, but also the increasing number of reporters arriving from other local stations. She established a clear boundary between the media and the accident scene, ensuring that their presence wouldn't interfere with emergency services imp. Ending a rifle. Tom Chun, sensing the broader implications of the story, began interviewing bystanders. Emma's footage proved particularly valuable, as she'd captured the entire sequence from the beginning. Her hands had steadied now, and she spoke articulately about what she'd witnessed, though she carefully avoided mentioning the strange behavior of the driver in the silver sedan. The story quickly evolved beyond just a traffic accident with a heroic dog. Social media users began connecting it to larger discussions about animal intelligence, the bond between humans and animals, and the role of community in crisis situations. Local animal rescue organizations seized the opportunity to highlight the potential of shelter dogs, noting that Max himself had been adopted. Channel 8's helicopter appeared overhead, providing aerial footage that showed the extent of the traffic backup and the growing crowd. The whirring blades added to the ambient noise, but Max remained focused, adjusting his stance only slightly to account for the new sound. His commitment to protecting Jake seemed to grow stronger with each passing minute. The ambulance's sirens grew louder as it approached, their wailing adding urgency to the scene. Tom Chin positioned himself strategically, ensuring Sarah could capture both the approaching emergency vehicles and Max's protective vigil. The media presence had transformed from simple news coverage into documentation of what was becoming a defining moment for Springfield. Professional and amateur photographers alike captured images that would later appear in newspapers and magazines. Max's steadfast guard, Linda's careful management of the scene, the gathering crowd's respectful distance, and the mystery driver still sitting in his vehicle. Each frame told part of a story that was growing more complex by the minute. Social media engagement continued to surge as the story spread. People shared their own stories of heroic pets, creating a virtual community united by appreciation for Max's bravery. Local businesses began posting offers of free services for Jake's recovery and special treats for Max, transforming the incident into a catalyst for community unity. The media attention, while intense, served an unexpected purpose. It created a documented record of events that would later prove crucial in unraveling the deeper mystery behind the accident. Every angle captured, every interview recorded, and every moment shared online would contribute to a larger narrative that none of the participants yet understood. What began as a simple traffic accident was evolving into something more significant, a story that would captivate not just Springfield, but audiences worldwide. Yet beneath the surface of this heartwarming tale of canine heroism, unseen connections were waiting to be revealed, adding layers of complexity to what seemed, on the surface, to be a straightforward story of courage and loyalty. The ambulance's arrival marked a critical phase in the morning's events. Paramedics David Chun and Maria Rodriguez stepped out, immediately assessing the unusual situation before them. Their combined 20 years of emergency response experience hadn't prepared them for a scene where a dog controlled access to their patient. Linda approached the paramedics, quickly explaining the situation. His name is Max, and he's been protecting Jake since the accident. He's allowing verbal contact, but blocking physical approach. She spoke efficiently, providing essential information while the paramedics gathered their equipment. I'm working on getting him to trust emergency personnel. Max's exhaustion had become visible. His panting had increased, and his golden fur was damp with sweat from standing guard in the morning sun. Despite his fatigue, his determination hadn't wavered. His eyes tracked the paramedics' movements while maintaining his protective position over Jake, who had begun showing signs of consciousness. Maria took the Recognizing the delicacy of the situation, she crouched at a safe distance, allowing Max to observe her movements while she spoke softly. "Hey there, brave boy. We're here to help your friend." Her voice, trained through years of calming scared patients, carried a soothing quality that seemed to reach Max. Linda continued her careful approach, now working in tandem with Maria. She used hand signals familiar to Max, gradually establishing a bridge between his protective instinct and the need for medical intervention. The crowd watched in tense silence as this careful choreography unfolded, phones still recording every moment. Jake's first coherent sounds drew Max's immediate attention. The cyclist groaned softly, his fingers twitching against the asphalt. Max's ears perked forward, and his posture shifted slightly, responding to signs of consciousness from the person he'd been protecting. This moment of divided attention provided an opportunity for the paramedics to move closer. David approached from the opposite side, carrying medical supplies while staying in Max's line of sight. The dog's intelligence showed in how he processed this new development. His protection expanded to create a small perimeter that included the paramedics while still keeping the general crowd at bay. It was as if he recognized their role as helpers rather than threats. Linda's voice remained steady as she praised Max's behavior, reinforcing his acceptance of the medical team. "Good boy, Max. Such a good boy. Let them help." Her words seemed to provide permission, and Max gradually allowed the paramedics closer access to Jake while maintaining his overall protective stance. The actual medical assessment began with Max watching every movement intently. His exhaustion showed in trembling muscles, but his dedication never wavered. The crowd, still recording, witnessed this extraordinary partnership between emergency responders and an ordinary dog who had become something more. As the paramedics worked, bystanders began approaching Linda, offering water for Max and sharing their amazement at his behavior. The dog accepted small sips of water without leaving his post, his focus remaining primarily on Jake and the medical team. His earlier fierce barking had transformed into occasional low whines, communicating concern rather than warning. Jake's first clear word surprised everyone. "The dog, is he still here?" His voice was weak, but clear enough to carry to those nearby. Max's tail wagged slightly, the first break in his serious demeanor since the accident began. The paramedics worked around this connection, understanding that their patient seemed calmed by Max's presence. The stretcher's arrival marked the final phase of the rescue operation. Max watched intently as Jake was carefully lifted and secured, his protective instinct evolving to match the changing situation. As Jake was wheeled toward the ambulance, Max walked alongside, maintaining his guard but now working in concert with the emergency team. At the ambulance doors, Jake reached out weakly, his fingers brushing Max's fur. "Thank you, boy," he whispered, before being loaded inside. Only then did Max finally relax his stance, allowing Linda to approach fully and attach his leash. The crowd erupted in applause, celebrating not just a rescue completed, but an extraordinary demonstration of loyalty and adaptation. The morning's drama appeared to be winding down, but the story was far from over. The mystery driver remained in his car, unnoticed by most as attention focused on Jake's rescue. And in the growing collection of media coverage, details were emerging that would soon connect this traffic accident to a far more complex narrative. The days following the accident saw Springfield transform into a community united by Max's heroic act. The city council, led by Mayor Sarah Chun, quickly organized a celebration event in Central Park, the same location where Max's morning had begun. So were Dina Riley just days before. Local businesses jumped into action, contributing to the event's organization. The Springfield banner erected a stage decorated with paw print motifs, while PetSmart donated supplies for a temporary dog park where other canines could participate in the celebration. The community's response transcended mere recognition. It became a movement celebrating the bond between humans and animals. Linda found herself overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since the incident, with interview requests from national media outlets and messages from animal advocacy groups. She handled the attention with grace, consistently redirecting focus to the broader message about the potential of rescue animals and the importance of proper training. Alex, still processing his own transformation from dog-fearing teenager to active participant in the unfolding events, volunteered to help coordinate the celebration. His fear of dogs had dissolved, replaced by a newfound respect and understanding. He spent hours working with the event planning committee, determined to make the celebration meaningful rather than merely ceremonial. The park underwent a remarkable transformation. Local artists created a temporary mural depicting Max's brave stance, while children from Springfield Elementary made thank you cards that lined the pathway leading to the stage. Food trucks set up along the perimeter, with several offering hero dog specials named in Max's honor. Community organizations seized the opportunity to promote animal welfare. The local shelter where Max had been adopted set up an information booth, sharing stories of other dogs awaiting homes. Their presence added depth to the celebration, reminding attendees that many potential heroes waited behind shelter doors. Emma, who had been quietly processing her own connection to events through her photography, created a striking photo exhibition. Her images captured not just the dramatic moments of Max's protection, but the smaller, more subtle instances of courage and community that had emerged throughout the morning. Her work, displayed near the stage, added an artistic dimension to the celebration. The morning of the event arrived with perfect weather, sunshine and mild temperatures that seemed to mirror the community's bright spirits. People began gathering early, many bringing their own dogs in a show of solidarity. The park filled with families, couples, and individuals, all drawn together by this remarkable story of courage and connection. Linda arrived with Max, who seemed slightly overwhelmed by the attention but maintained his characteristic gentle demeanor. He'd received a professional grooming for the occasion, his golden coat gleaming in the sunlight. Various attendees approached to pat him, each sharing their own stories of how his actions had touched them. The ceremony itself was designed to be more than just a recognition of Max's bravery. Mayerchin spoke about the ripple effects of small actions, how one dog's instinctive protection had sparked a broader conversation about community and compassion. Local veterinarians discussed animal behavior and the importance of understanding and respecting our four-legged companions. Throughout the celebration, Max remained close to Linda, occasionally wagging his tail at children who approached or accepting treats from admirers. His ordinary dog behaviors, scratching an ear, sniffing interesting spots, looking hopefully at food, reminded everyone that heroes often come in the most unexpected packages. Alex took the stage to share his story of transformation, his voice steady as he described how witnessing Max's bravery had helped him overcome his fear of dogs. His honest account resonated with many in the audience who had similar fears or prejudices. The young man who had run for help had become an advocate for understanding. The event created a space for connection and reflection. People share these stories of their own pets, discussed the impact of the incident on their perspectives, and formed new friendships based on their shared appreciation of this remarkable story. What began as a celebration of one dog's bravery had evolved into a testament to community spirit. Yet beneath the joy and celebration, undercurrents of tension remained. The mystery driver's identity was still unknown to most, and certain attendees seemed more interested in the event than others might expect. The celebration, while genuine, was about to become the backdrop for revelations that would shock the community. The celebration shifted into a more intimate phase as community members began sharing their personal stories from the stage. The microphone passed from person to person, each tale adding layers to the collective narrative of how animals had impacted their lives, with Max's story as the catalyst for this outpouring of experiences. Dr. Sarah Williams, the city's most experienced veterinarian, took the stage first. In 30 years of practice, I've witnessed countless examples of animal intelligence and loyalty, she began, her voice carrying authority earned through decades of experience. But what Max demonstrated goes beyond instinct. It shows the depth of understanding these animals can develop through proper care and training. Local business owners spoke about how the incident had changed their policies. James Chun, owner of Springfield's largest restaurant, announced that his establishment would now be dog-friendly, with a portion of proceeds going to the local animal shelter. Other businesses followed suit, transforming Max's heroism into lasting community change. Linda's speech drew particular attention. She stood on stage with Max sitting calmly beside her, his presence adding weight to her words. "When I adopted Max 3 years ago, the shelter told me he had been returned twice by previous owners who found him too energetic," she revealed. "Today, that energy and dedication saved a life. Every dog deserves a chance to show their true potential." The crowd hushed as she continued, sharing details about Max's training and development. She emphasized the importance of patience, consistency, and understanding in building trust with animals. Her words resonated particularly with Alex, who sat in the front row, nodding in agreement as she described the transformation possible when fear is replaced with understanding. Senior citizens from the local retirement community shared stories of their therapy dogs, explaining how animal companionship had improved their lives. These testimonials highlighted the broader impact of human-animal bonds, extending Max's story into a larger narrative about connection and healing. Children from Springfield Elementary presented a special performance, a play they had written about Max's heroic deed. Their simple but touching interpretation brought smiles and tears to the audience, especially when a small girl dressed as Max stood guard over her classmate playing Jake, her paper ears flopping with determination. The shelter's representative, Maria Rodriguez, provided statistics about adoption rates and success stories. "Since Max's story went viral, our adoption inquiries have increased by 300%, she announced. "People are beginning to understand that every shelter dog has the potential to be extraordinary." Professional dog trainers offered insights into canine behavior, using Max's actions as examples of how dogs process information and respond to crisis situations. Their explanations helped the audience understand the complexity behind what had appeared to be purely instinctive behavior. Throughout the sharing session, Max remained attentive, his ears perking up at certain voices or sounds. His occasional tail wags and gentle interactions with nearby children demonstrated the balance of his nature, both protector and companion. His presence added authenticity to every story shared. As the afternoon progressed, the event took on an almost ceremonial quality. People approached the stage not just to share stories, but to express gratitude for how this incident had changed their perspective on animals and community. Each testimony built upon the previous ones, creating a tapestry of interconnected experiences. Linda's final words focused on the future. "Max's actions have shown us that heroism wears many forms. But more importantly, they've reminded us that every animal deserves the chance to be understood, loved, and trusted. This isn't just about one brave dog. It's about recognizing the potential in every creature to make a difference." The sharing session concluded with a moment of silence, broken only by the occasional bark from attending dogs. The community had come together not just to celebrate a hero, but to acknowledge the profound impact animals have on human lives. However, as the event moved toward its conclusion, no one realized that the most shocking revelations were yet to come. The celebratory atmosphere shifted dramatically when a man in a weathered gray suit emerged from the crowd. His appearance was disheveled, with 3 days' worth of stubble and dark circles under his eyes. Those who had been present at the accident immediately recognized him as the driver from the silver sedan, though he had remained largely forgotten in the celebration of Max's heroism. Linda noticed him first, her hand instinctively moving to Max's collar. The dog's posture changed subtly, not aggressive, but alert. His eyes fixed on the approaching man with the same intensity he had shown during the accident, sensing something significant about to unfold. The man moved slowly toward the stage, his hands visibly trembling. "My name is Robert Morrison," he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet park. "I was the driver who nearly killed Jake, and I need to tell you all why." The crowd's murmurs ceased, replaced by a tense silence. Emma, who had been organizing her photo exhibition, froze in place. Her camera slipped slightly in her hands as she recognized the surname, Morrison, the same as her mother's maiden name. Her phone buzzed in her pocket with an urgent text from her mother, but she couldn't take her eyes off the man approaching the stage. Robert's voice cracked as he continued. 15 years ago, I abandoned my family, my wife, my son Jake, because I couldn't face the consequences of my actions. I had embezzled money from my company, and rather than face them or the law, I ran. His confession echoed through the park's sound system, each word landing like a stone in still water. The crowd's reaction rippled outward from the stage. Some gasped, others pulled out phones to record, and a few began connecting the dots between Jake the cyclist and this unexpected revelation. Linda remained near Max, watching as the dog's attention shifted between Robert and various points in the crowd, as if tracking the invisible lines of connection being revealed. That morning, Robert continued, his voice steadying, I received a text message from my old partner at the company. The statute of limitations on my crime had expired. I was distracted, reading about my freedom from prosecution, when I hit Jake. I didn't recognize him at first. How could I? He was 7 when I left. But when I saw his ID at the scene, Max's ears twitched at a sound from the back of the crowd. Jake had arrived in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse from the hospital. His presence created an electric tension in the air. The dog's tail lowered, and he moved slightly forward, positioning himself once again as a protective barrier, this time between father and son. The revelation sparked a flurry of whispered conversations. Emma's phone continued buzzing. Her mother was now calling repeatedly. Her hands shook as she realized this man, this catalyst for the entire chain of events, was her uncle, her mother's long-lost brother who had vanished. When Emma was just a toddler, Jake's face remained unreadable as he was wheeled closer to the stage. The crowd parted automatically, creating a path. Max watched this approach intently, his body language communicating both protection and uncertainty. The dog who had become a symbol of loyalty and courage now stood witness to a moment where human loyalty had failed so dramatically. Robert's next words came out in a rush. I've spent 15 years running from my mistakes. When I hit Jake, I was finally free from legal consequences, but watching Max protect my son with more courage and dedication than I ever showed, I couldn't run anymore. Some things don't have a statute of limitations. Some debts can't be cleared by time alone. The park had become eerily silent except for Robert's voice and the occasional rustle of leaves in the afternoon breeze. The celebration of heroism had transformed into something else entirely. A moment of reckoning, of long-buried truths surfacing in the wake of a simple act of canine bravery. Max remained the steady center of this emotional storm, his presence a reminder of the unconditional loyalty that had brought them all to this moment. His eyes moved between Jake and Robert, as if understanding the weight of the drama unfolding before him. The tension in the air suggested that this revelation was just the beginning of a much larger story. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Central Park as Jake finally broke his silence. His voice, though weakened from his injuries, carried clearly through the hushed crowd. I recognized your car, he said, addressing his father directly. I recognized it because it's the same model and color you drove away in 15 years ago. I've thought about that silver sedan every day since. Max shifted position, moving closer to Jake's wheelchair while maintaining a watchful eye on Robert. The dog's intuitive understanding of emotional tensions remained evident in his body language. Alert but not aggressive, protective yet aware of the delicate situation unfolding. But there's something else everyone needs to know, Jake continued, his hands gripping the wheelchair's armrests. Something that explains why you really ran, doesn't it, Dad? His voice took on an edge that made several audience members step back. It wasn't just about the embezzlement. Robert's face drained of color. Jake, please, the money you stole, Jake pressed on. It wasn't just company funds. It was Mom's medical research funding. Research that could have helped thousands of people with rare genetic disorders. You didn't just steal money. You stole hope from families waiting for a cure. The revelation sent shockwaves through the crowd. Emma, still processing her own connection to this drama, finally answered her phone. Her mother's voice came through, confirming everything: the medical research, the stolen funding, the years of silence about their family's shame. Linda watched as Max's attention focused intently on Jake, the dog seemingly sensing the deep pain behind his words. The celebration of heroism had transformed into something far more complex. A story of betrayal, consequences, and the long shadow of past decisions. Your mother's research, Robert spoke, his voice barely audible. It was revolutionary. The pharmaceutical company I worked for saw it as a threat to their existing treatments. They offered me money to make it disappear. I convinced myself I was protecting our family's financial future, but Jake laughed bitterly. But instead, you destroyed everything. Mom never recovered from the loss of her life's work. She died believing she had failed all those families waiting for a cure. And you? You've been free all this time, while others paid the price for your choices. Max whined softly, picking up on the emotional tension. His tail lowered, but he remained steadfast beside Jake's wheelchair, embodying the loyalty that had been so conspicuous, absent in human relationships. The crowd watched in stunned silence as years of buried truth emerged. Robert's crime had been far more than financial fraud. It was a betrayal of trust, hope, and humanity itself. The simple traffic accident that had showcased the dog's bravery had unknowingly set in motion the unraveling of a decades-old conspiracy. "I can't undo what I did," Robert admitted, his shoulders sagging. "But maybe it's not too late to make it right. Your mother's research notes, I kept them. All of them. They're in a safety deposit box in Springfield National Bank. I couldn't bring myself to destroy them, even when I destroyed everything else." Jake's expression shifted slightly. "The original research? All of it? Everything," Robert confirmed, including her final breakthrough that the company never saw. "I've carried that guilt every day, knowing I had the key to helping those families, but was too cowardly to come forward." Max's ears perked up at the change in Jake's voice. The dog had spent hours protecting this man during the accident, and now seemed equally invested in protecting him through this emotional revelation. The afternoon light continued to fade as father and son faced each other across the park grounds, their personal drama having transformed a simple celebration into a moment of truth and possibility. The story that had begun with a dog's brave protection of a stranger had unveiled a complex web of past decisions, hidden consequences, and perhaps the possibility of redemption. As the crowd watched in stunned silence, Max did something unexpected. He stepped forward and sat directly between Jake and Robert, not choosing sides but rather creating a bridge between them. In that moment, the dog's simple act of positioning himself between conflict demonstrated once again that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the most unexpected sources. The story that had captured Springfield's heart was far from over, but it had evolved into something far more complex than anyone could have imagined. A tale that began with a dog's bravery had become a story of human fallibility, the weight of choices, and a long path toward redemption.